Hey everyone, we are going to make sourdough starter from scratch. So really you just need a few things. A jar, some water, some flour, a scale, a spurtle, and a... So what we're going to do is the 1-to-1 ratio to get this started, all right? What does that mean? It means equal parts flour, equal parts water. So this weighs 534 grams. So I'm actually going to zero this out, make it easier for everyone. I'm going to pour 100 grams of whole wheat flour.
I always try to use whole wheat flour in the beginning and often when I feed my starter, but I don't typically bake with it just because I prefer the taste of bread flour.
100 grams of filtered room temperature water going in.
And real quick, one more thing about that wheat flour is it just gives your starter a lot more strength compared to normal all-purpose or bread flour.
Mix this up. So we are done with the scale today.
And you want to mix this until there are no more dry pockets of flour. Don't forget to look at the bottom of the jar to make sure you've mixed everything thoroughly.
Oh, there is something else that you guys need. I'm sorry, a rubber band. And I like the thick ones because you'll see once you have it on, it kind of helps you manipulate the level so that it's most accurate.
All right, so we've completed day 1 of growing your own starter. We're going to come back tomorrow, same time, and we're going to feed this. In the meantime, store this somewhere dark, but room temperature. See you tomorrow. All right, so welcome back to day 2 of making your sourdough starter from scratch. Today we are going to feed our starter, and we're going to begin by getting the amount of starter in the jar back to 100 grams total. For example, I know that my empty jar weighs 534 grams, so I'm looking for 634 grams total to know that I have 100 grams of starter to begin with. I hope that made sense. If not, leave a question and I will clear up whatever you guys need me to clear up. Here's what you need: your flour, your filtered room temperature water, your jar of starter, 100 grams to begin with again, and your scale. We began our starter with the 1-to-1 ratio method, which is equal parts water and flour. And for our feeding schedule, we're going to use that same method, and it's now going to be considered 1-to-1-to-1, which is equal parts starter, filtered water, and flour. Mix and make sure that you scrape down as much off the side of the jars as possible. Grab your rubber band, place it around the jar so that you can track any growth if there is any at all. Right, let's go on ahead and cover this up loosely. We're going to apply the lid loosely today because we do want this to breathe. Go ahead and store this somewhere dark but room temperature, and we'll come back in 24 hours to see the progress and for another feeding. See you tomorrow.
Sourdough starter from scratch, day 3. And do you see Annie's growth? She's grown and then she's collapsed a little. That is a good sign. That is totally normal. That just means that she was growing and she reached her peak for today and now she's hungry. So we need to feed her. But before we feed her, we're going to get rid of some of this. So we're going to follow that same rule from yesterday. Get this back down to 100 grams and then we're going to do the feeding 1-to-1 ratio. See the bubbles forming? That bad boy is growing. Let's go ahead and get rid of some of this. We're throwing it in the trash. We are not saving this discard yet.
You'll know when you're ready to actually save and use your discard for other recipes because your starter would have already peaked and it would be the unfed or inactive part of that starter.
Yeah, it's definitely time for me to get a new scale. All right, so 100.
All right, we are going to thoroughly mix this and scrape the sides. We're looking for a thick pancake-like batter consistency. Pop the lid on loosely, store this in a dark room temperature spot. We'll come back tomorrow, same time, for another feeding and a progress check. Welcome back to my sourdough starter from scratch, day 4. Right now, we don't have that much growth in terms of height, but we do have some.
And you can just ignore this. This is from when I grabbed it. It must have been too wild. Story of my life. There are bubbles. This is indicative of good growth activity. So we're not doing too bad. It has a little twang to it.
Now let's talk about the smell and the consistency. Ultimately, we are growing yeast and bacteria, so it might stink sometimes, but that's okay. That's how you know you're doing it right. In situations like this, where the funk is a little bit more potent and the consistency is a little thinner, we're going to up the flour amount added. So we'll keep the 100 gram starter We'll add 150 grams of flour and we'll keep the 100 grams of water. This is going to give your starter a lot more strength. It'll be a lot thicker than day 1 through 3. It'll just be a little harder to stir.
Very, very, very thick.
Adjust your rubber band, loosely apply your lid, store this in a dark spot at room temperature, and we'll check back tomorrow. Welcome back to our sourdough starter from scratch series, and we are on day 5. Day 5, we have minimal growth, but we do have some, and most importantly, we see that there are bubbles, which indicates growth activity. We're going to dump out all but 100 grams of starter, add 100 grams of bread flour, 100 grams of lukewarm filtered water, and mix it up thoroughly. Scrape down your sides and adjust your rubber band. Apply the lid loosely and store this in a dark but room temperature spot, and we'll check back tomorrow.
Back to our sour starter. Let's try it again. Welcome back to our sourdough starter from series. Welcome back to our sourdough starter from scratch series, and we're on day 6. Same thing as day 5. Not a lot of growth in terms of height, but there is some. Okay, seems to be doing well. It's funky, but not like punch you in the face. It's like a, okay, we know we're trying to grow some sourdough starter. 150 grams. So we're done with the scale. And we can expect this to be very thick because we did 1 to 1.5 to 1 ratio. I have it mixed around pretty good. Thick. She's thick. Okay, we got the rubber band adjusted. Okay, so put the lid on loosely so that she can breathe. We're gonna store her in a dark spot, but it's, room temperature. All right, guys, see you tomorrow. Welcome back to our sourdough starter from scratch series, and we are on day 7. It has been a full week. 7 whole days. Do you see Annie? She is more than doubled in size. She is ready. If I wanted to make bread with her right now, I could. Take a look at the inside of her. Okay, off camera, I already looked. Can you see how bubbly she is? So we're going to discard all but 100 grams of this starter. And because this starter is now active, we're going to save the discard.
Day 1 through 6, we would just throw away the excess, but day 7, she's fully peaked and we're now going to preserve it. It's super low maintenance. You just pop it in the refrigerator and forget about it. You don't have to feed it. And there's so many great recipes that are specifically for discard. Now that the starter is active, we don't have to use a scale when feeding. We're just going to eyeball it. Rule of thumb is that you just want to add more flour than you do water so that you can maintain that thick pancake-like batter consistency. So going forward, you just want to feed your starter the night before you want to bake bread. Just keep it stored in a dark spot at room temperature. Tomorrow we'll come back and make our first loaf together.